Square Cow Countdowns. Hello everybody, I am Slash, but you probably already knew that. At least I hope you knew that, since that's also the name of this channel. Anyways, in this episode we're counting down the top 10 Awesomest game consoles. Is Awesomest a word? No. Do I care? Not really. This is an all-encompassing list. I left no stone unturned in my research. Well, except for that really big one that I couldn't lift no matter how much spinach I ate. Anything and everything about these consoles were taken into consideration. Range of games, hardware, controllers, performance, price, graphics, and even lifespan. Keep in mind that this list is based entirely on my own personal opinions, which will probably be very different from your opinions. If you agree with me, great, tell me about it in the comments. And if you don't agree with me, well then tell me about that too. Remember how we all used to blow in our game cartridges if they stopped working? Yeah, it turns out that doesn't actually do anything. I don't know where I'm going with this. It's about video games and I wanted to talk about it. Whatever. Ready, set, go. Number 11. Atari 2600. Without the Atari, gaming as we know it wouldn't even exist. The Atari was the first console I remember playing, but I was too young to really understand what I was doing. But I do remember how unintuitive the controller was. It's just a joystick and one button. It worked well enough to play the classics like Asteroids, Galaga, Space Invaders, and Pac-Man, but it's by no means a good controller. In my opinion, the Atari hasn't aged well, but when it first came out, it was awesome. It even won the console wars against the ColecoVision and the Intellivision. Number 10. Nintendo Entertainment System. I went back and forth about whether the NES or the Super Nintendo should be on the list. In the end, I decided to include them both, but to put the Super Nintendo higher. The NES gave birth to some of the most successful franchises of all time, like Mario and Zelda, but the Super Nintendo was such a monumental improvement that it completely overshines the NES. Plus, I always hated that square controller. I have massive hands, so I found it really uncomfortable. And you know what they say about guys with big hands? Oops, I think it's actually big feet. Well, I also have really big feet. Ladies. Number 9. Sega Dreamcast. 9/9/99 was the day Sega released the Dreamcast in North America, and it was a gift from the gods. Sadly, I never owned one, but I did have a couple of friends who did. I remember playing Power Stone and taking turns on Sonic Adventure. I completely forgot about it until I started doing research, but the memory cards for the Dreamcast had little screens on them that you'd attach to the controller. Speaking of the controller, why the hell was the cord for the controller on the bottom? Sure, there was a little notch you could attach it to, but why did they just have the cord come from the top? I'll bet you that's why Sega never made another console. Number 8. Sony Playstation. The PlayStation is the console that made me fall in love with video games. It's the first console I ever owned, and it's also home to some of the greatest games ever. The PS1 Final Fantasy games, the Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon franchises, Tomb Raider, Ape Escape, Resident Evil 2, Silent Hill, the list goes on and on. I didn't know this until recently, but the PlayStation was the result of a failed partnership between Sony and Nintendo. The console was so successful that it led to the failure of several other consoles, like the Apple Pippin and Atari Jaguar, just to name a few. By the way, both of those were on my list of worst consoles, so if you enjoy this video, head on over to my channel after you're done and search for it. Number 7. Super Nintendo. While it's true that the NES is where a lot of Nintendo's franchises started, they didn't really find their footing until the Super Nintendo came into the world. Super Mario World, Super Metroid. Wow, Nintendo really likes putting the name of their consoles somewhere in the game titles, don't they? Anyways, it still amazes me how the Super Nintendo was only a 16-bit console, but compared to the NES, it was like a quantum leap. Better graphics, better color, and better sound all add up to making the Super Nintendo one of the greatest consoles ever made. Number 6. Game Boy Advance SP. Notice how I specifically said the SP? Yeah, that's because the original model was so dark that you couldn't see diddly squat. It was darker than the dark side of the moon, so Nintendo was like, hey, I don't suppose gamers enjoy being able to see what they're doing, and made the SP model with a glorious backlight. The Advance had lots of incredible games, and you could carry it in your back pocket. My personal favorites are Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, the Gen 3 Pokemon games, and the Mario Advance games. There it is again. Nintendo plastered the word advance into so many of the games. Are they afraid we'll forget what the name of the system is? It's not like it isn't already written on the screen. Number 5. Xbox 360. That's right, folks. Me, the PlayStation fan, put the 360 on his list of best consoles. For the 7th generation of consoles, the PS3 and 360 were so similar, but the 360 had better online support with Xbox Live, backwards compatibility with most Xbox games, and that fantastic controller. The only major flaw was that the original model was prone to red ringing, whereas the PS3 had a built-in Blu-ray player, free online services that got hacked, and a meh controller. Ugh, those shoulder buttons were awful. Plus, the PS3 cost over $600 when it first launched.
$599 US.
Despite how much I loved the PS3 and still do, I can admit that the 360 was overall the better console. Number 4. Nintendo 64. As we should all know, it took Nintendo 64 tries to get the N64 right, so they called it the N64 in celebration of when they finally succeeded. No, but seriously, the 64 is because it's a 64-bit console. While I never owned one, I did play other people's fairly often. There was an N64 at my dentist's office, and another one at my daycare. The only thing I don't like about the N64 is that controller. It's so weird. No matter which way I hold it, it never feels natural. The joystick is garbage and led to many painful palm blisters from Mario Party, and the C buttons are very awkwardly placed. I think the N64's most memorable feature was its library of incredible games. Paper Mario, Ocarina of Time, Star Fox 64, GoldenEye, Super Mario 64, Donkey Kong 64, Perfect Dark, Banjo-Kazooie, Smash Bros. Oh, so many great games. But what's with all the 64s? We get it, Nintendo, it's a game for the N64. They even did it on the game boxes for any exclusive games. There's a little peel in the corner saying that it's only for the N64, but the game is called Super Mario 64. Oh no, and all I have is the N63. Number 3. PlayStation 4. Like I mentioned earlier, in the 7th gen, the 360 was overall better than the PS3, but in the current gen, the PS4 is superior to the Xbone, aka the Xbox One. While I understand why they decided to call it the Xbox One, I still think it's a stupid name. There's 360 degrees in a circle, so if you had 2 circles, that would be 720 degrees. Xbox 720. It sounds cool and is a very creative name. But Microsoft didn't do that. It's almost like Microsoft and Sony switched places. The PS3 started off lame, but got better, while the 360 stayed pretty consistent. And now it's the PS4 that started off strong and the Xbox One that started off lame. I mean, come on, the original model was the size of a frickin' microwave. It was so huge that Microsoft shrank it down by 40% with the One S version. Now, I'm not saying that the Xbox One is bad, it's just not as good as the PS4, in my opinion. Everything that was wrong with the PS3 has been fixed and then some with the PS4. I think the controller is one of the most notable changes. The light bar is cool, but it doesn't really do anything. Other new additions like the headphone jack and speakers on the controller are awesome, plus bonus points for the fact that the PS4 is just a really solid console. Number 2. Nintendo Switch. It's a good thing Harkle isn't here, and otherwise we'd have to hear about how he got his Switch for free and that I bought mine on the Facebook Marketplace for $300. Brand new in the box. When I saw the first trailer for the Switch, I thought it was a lame idea, because the whole point of a home console is that you play the games, you know, at home. Regardless, I knew I would have to get one eventually if Pokemon jumped ship, and they did. The Joy-Cons feel pretty cheap, but they're definitely better than Wiimotes. When you get right down to it, playing the Switch on the go with both Joy-Cons attached is almost identical to playing on the Wii U gamepad. The thing that baffles me is that the Switch itself is tiny, but it can play games at 60 frames per second more reliably than my PS4 Pro. The Switch is miles better than the Wii U in every way, but it is kind of annoying how expensive extra Joy-Cons are. And while it is cool that you can play Smash at the airport or on the bus, going from the TV screen to the itty-bitty Switch screen is very awkward, so I couldn't justify putting it at number 1. Number 1. PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 is to the PlayStation what the Super Nintendo is to the NES. An upgrade in so many ways. It gave us some franchises that are still around today, like God of War and Ratchet & Clank. I remember I started with the original model, but then I got the slim model when my mom broke my PS2 when she tried cleaning it with a can of compressed air. Not only were the graphics significantly better, but all the games played at a glorious 60 frames per second. The range of games was just outstanding. No matter what kind of games you like, there was bound to be a game on the PS2 for you. Because of how it improved on the original PlayStation in every way, and has absolutely no flaws that I can think of, I hereby declare that the PlayStation 2 is the #1 awesomest console of all time. Oh, hello. I'm Slash. Did you like the video? You don't have to lie. You can be honest with me, because we're friends. Well, at least I hope we're friends. If we're not friends, I at least hope that we're not enemies. If you want to go watch more videos, I've got a whole playlist of goodies ready for you. Just click right up here, and you'll be taken to the playlist of all the other countdowns that I've done. And if you want to subscribe to my channel, there's a button down there somewhere that you can click on. But before you go, just hear me out. I'm not expecting anything, but just hear me out, okay? Just hear me out, because, you know, we're friends now, right? 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 Anyway, take a look here. See that symbol? That means that I have a Patreon account. And if you follow the link in the description down below, it'll take you to my Patreon page. I have no followers, and this is making me want to hurt myself. But not really. It just makes me kind of sad. So if you want to help me out and do something about that, you can go and take a look there. But don't do anything if you're not in a position where you can actually afford to, because that wouldn't be cool either. I've got all kinds of different rewards based on how much you're able to subscribe or pledge. So do that. Subscribe to the channel and check out this playlist. I gotta go. See you later. Bye-bye.